Hey guys, this time you need to listen to this audio recording to decode the exam contents.
Welcome to the deep dive. If you need a shortcut to being expertly informed, you are definitely in the right place.
Today we're going deep.
We're cracking open the manual for the Indian Green Building Council, the IGBC, and specifically the Green New Buildings Rating System. This is really for those of you gearing up for the IGBC Accredited Professional Credential.
And that AP credential, it's not just another line on your resume. It's a real stamp of competence.
It signals you're the guide, right? The one who can actually navigate these projects.
Exactly. The whole point is to have someone on the team who can integrate the right design measures from day one and, just as importantly, streamline that whole certification process.
And I love that the IGBC puts a number on that. They actually value that role with points.
They do. It's right there in the system. Under Innovation and Development, Credit 4, you get 1 point just for having an IGBC AP on the team.
That's a huge signal.
It is. It shows commitment, it shows expertise, and it tells the assessors you're serious.
Okay, so our mission today is to cut through all the noise. We're going to break down two really critical areas. First, the 7 main categories that shape the whole system.
And second, the non-negotiables, the mandatory codes and standards that every single project has to meet.
The absolute foundation. So let's jump in.
Let's do it. So structuring this is key. The whole IGBC system is really built on these 7 conceptual categories. Think of them like 7 pillars.
Okay, so pillar 1 is Sustainable Architecture and Design, or SA.
Right. And this one is, well, it's the most conceptual, but you can argue it's the most important.
This is where you think about the building's orientation, the passive features, all the smart, low-cost stuff you do right at the beginning.
And if you get that part wrong, everything else becomes a very expensive fix later on.
So true. Okay, so moving from the building itself, pillar 2 is Site Selection and Planning, SSP.
This is all about how the building interacts with what's around it. So you've got your local regulations, but also really specific things like soil erosion control and access to amenities.
And those specifics are perfect for mock test questions, I've noticed. For amenities, it's what, 7 basic amenities?
At least 7, yeah.
Oh.
Things like a bank, a clinic, a grocery store, all within a 1-kilometer walking distance.
Which really pushes projects towards community integration, away from just being a standalone island.
It forces you to look at the whole urban context, and then you have that 800-meter rule for public transport.
And of course, the heat island effect, which is a huge deal in India's climate.
For both the roof and for the ground level stuff, like parking lots.
Okay, so next up, pillar 3, a big one, water conservation, WC.
You can't certify without it. This is where you find mandatory rainwater harvesting, efficient fixtures, and then the more advanced stuff like treating and reusing wastewater right there on site.
And right behind water is pillar 4, energy efficiency, or EE.
Of course. And this is a huge category. It goes from the absolute bare minimum performance standards all the way up to commissioning, using eco-friendly refrigerants and, adding renewable energy.
On-site or off-site, right?
Either one, yeah.
Then we get into the physical stuff with pillar 5, building materials and resources, BMR.
This is the entire supply chain. Managing construction waste, setting up waste segregation for after the building is occupied, and of course, using sustainable materials.
Like reused, recycled, or locally sourced.
Exactly.
Okay, pillar 6 is one I think often gets overlooked in normal construction. Indoor environmental quality, IEQ.
It really does. And this is all about the health of the people inside the building. We're talking fresh air ventilation rates, no tobacco smoke, lots of daylight, and using low-emitting materials.
So your building isn't off-gassing chemicals.
Basically, yeah, minimizing indoor air pollution.
And finally, we've got pillar 7, innovation and development ID.
And this is where that AP credit we talked about lives, but it's also for rewarding projects that do something really novel or perform way beyond even the top rating.
So that's the framework, the 7 categories.
That's the structure.
Yeah.
But if you're prepping for that AP exam or you're actually guiding a project, you have to master the mandatory requirements.
This is the gate. This isn't where you earn points. It's just what you have to do to even be considered.
It's the absolute floor.
So let me ask a framing question. What if a project scores, say, 80 points? Which is amazing, but it fails just one of these mandatory requirements.
It's an immediate rejection. The project cannot certify. Period.
Wow. Okay, so they're serious?
They are the definition of responsible building.
Let's run through some specifics then. Soil erosion control. This has to be in place before and during construction.
Right, and they're very specific. It has to conform to the NBC 2005, Part 10.
The older version, that's a detail that could trip someone up.
It often does. It just shows how some of these core environmental rules carry through. And for technical systems, all HVAC equipment has to use CFC-free refrigerants.
And halon-free fire suppression, no ozone-depleting stuff, full stop.
Full stop.
And then there's the hard numbers, like with minimum water efficiency.
Yep, this is the baseline for all your fixtures. In aggregate, they have to meet certain numbers. For water closets, it's 6 liters per flush for a full flush, 3 for a half.
And faucets are 6 liters per minute.
Exactly. And that aggregate part is key. You can balance things out a bit. Then for rainwater harvesting, the system has to be big enough to capture at least the runoff from a one-day rainfall event.
From both the roof and the non-roof areas.
From all of it, yeah. It makes a real difference for stormwater.
Okay, let's talk energy. This is where it gets a little more complex.
It splits a bit.
Yeah.
If the building is air-conditioned, you have to comply with either the ECBC 2008 or the International HHRE Standard 90.1/2010.
And you can do that through a performance path or prescriptive path.
Correct. But if the building is non-air conditioned, which, many are,
Sure.
it still has mandatory rules. They're mostly prescriptive, focused on the building envelope. Things like the solar heat gain coefficient or SHGC and the U value.
Basically making sure the building itself can stay comfortable without AC.
That's the goal. And the last mandatory item is indoor air quality. You have to meet minimum fresh air rates. And again, they point to an international standard, ASARA 62.1/2010.
Okay, so these standards are the absolute bedrock.
They are. And that leads us right into the foundational codes themselves. For the AP exam, knowing which code governs which requirement is half the battle.
Let's start with the big one in India.
Yeah.
The National Building Code, or NBC 2016.
This is your blueprint for safety and structure, and there are specific nuggets to remember. For example, you need a minimum of 2 exits if you have 50 or more people in the building.
And there's a limit on travel distance to an exit, right?
A very strict limit. It's a maximum of 45 meters for residential or educational buildings. That's a core life safety metric.
And it helps to know which parts of the code to look at. So Part 9 is for plumbing,
Yeah.
and Part 11 is for sustainability and energy.
Yes. And another simple one that comes up a lot, the minimum floor-to-floor height for residential buildings is 2.7 meters.
Good to know. Okay, next up, the Energy Conservation Building Code, the ECBC.
This is the financial trigger, really. It becomes mandatory for commercial buildings with a connected load of 200 kilowatts or more.
And this is what sets the baseline for things like lighting power density, LPD, and the minimum efficiency, or COP, for your HVAC systems.
It provides those hard technical specs to make sure energy use is optimized from the start.
Now, what about the US-based standards? The IGBC uses HHRA a lot. It's key to keep the 3 main ones straight.
Absolutely. You just have to think of their functions. HHRA 90.1 is the energy specialist for commercial buildings.
Okay, 90.1, energy.
HHRA 62.1 is the air quality specialist. It gives you those minimum ventilation rates.
62.1, air. Got it.
And HHRA 55 is the comfort specialist. It defines the acceptable ranges for temperature and humidity.
55, comfort. So
Yeah.
90.1, 62.1, 55, energy, air, comfort.
You've got it. And lastly, for materials, you have the Bureau of Indian Standards, or BIS. Key ones to know are IS 456 for reinforced concrete and IS 2500 for drinking water quality.
So we've done the categories and the mandatory codes. Now we get to the fun part. Earning points by going above and beyond.
This is where we get into the really ambitious targets. IGBC expects certified buildings to achieve somewhere around 20 to 30% in energy savings.
Okay.
And an even bigger number for water, like 30 to 50% savings compared to a conventional building, right from day one.
That 30 to 50% for water is massive. And to get the credit for enhanced water fixtures, you need to show your design uses, what, 8% less water than that already efficient baseline?
An 8% improvement, yes. And for energy, it's similar. The points are tied directly to cost savings over that tough AHRA 90.1 2010 base case.
So for an owner-occupied building, a 6% energy cost saving gets you 1 point.
That's right. The more you save, the more points you get.
Let's talk materials credits, because this is where it gets tricky. The metrics are based on cost, not volume or weight.
That is the most common stumbling block. For recycled content, you need to show that 10% of the total material cost comes from recycled sources to get 1 point.
And for local materials, the radius is 400 kilometers.
Correct. The materials have to be manufactured within 400 kilometers of the site, and the credit starts when 20% of your total material cost meets that rule.
That 400-kilometer radius is so specific. It must force some really tough choices on supply chains.
It absolutely does. That's the tension of sustainability, isn't it? It's not just about performance, it's about logistics.
True. Another area with hard numbers is heat island reduction.
Very clear thresholds here. For the roof, you need to cover at least 75% of it with a high solar reflective index, or SRI, material.
And for the non-roof areas, the pavements and paths.
There, you need to cover at least 50% of those impervious areas with either shading or high SRI materials, specifically an SRI of 29 or higher.
So many details to track.
And all these numbers really tie back to those core design strategies, especially passive architecture. The system is designed for the Indian climate. It rewards things like deep porches, shaded walls, features that are historically smart and reduce the need for AC.
Right. And there's one other detail I found really telling. Under wastewater, it encourages things like constructed wetlands or composting toilets.
The ecologically balanced systems, yeah.
But it explicitly says traditional septic tanks and leach fields are not approved.
That one distinction says a lot, doesn't it? It shows the IGBC is pushing for systems that are regenerative, not just disposal systems.
It's about creating a closed loop on site.
Exactly.
So before we finish, let's touch on the admin side. All the official info exam registration fees, CIR forms, it's all on the IGBC website, IGBC.